Hey guys, this is Brock, and I just wanted to welcome you back to a new type of video that I was going to try and do on the channel. I'm also considering doing videos like this of older movies that aren't like in theaters anymore. So let me know if there's an interest in that, and I'll be sure to take a look at it, see if it's something that I think that I would be able to provide some decent knowledge on, and I'll look into it. So, this video today, I wanted to talk about Tenet and how well I thought the music worked in this movie. It's by Ludwig Göransson. Christopher Nolan directed it. The music is by Ludwig. And he's a film composer who is in his mid-30s, he's previously scored films such as Fruitvale Station, Venom, Creed 1 and 2, but he's better known for works more recently, The Mandalorian, and also he won an Oscar for Black Panther. So I was first introduced into his work with the film Fruitvale Station, and that was decent. I did enjoy it, but I didn't really start to follow his work and really appreciate it until the very first Creed film, where I felt he really knocked it out of the park with a brilliant score that paid a lot of respect to the original like Rocky music. So in terms of Tenet, that's just more of like a history on Göransson. But in terms of Tenet, I wanted to talk about how this music sort of moved me and really like compelled me to make a video series. Like I have felt this before, where I wanted to make videos about how music has affected me and how I'm very passionate about it and everything like that, but I've never actually done it because I wasn't sure how to go about it. But I think this is a good plan for now, as long as I continue to strive to make them better. So I really felt that this was it's like an amazing example of how well music can work to picture. And I think not only because Göransson was so passionate about this movie, but Christopher Nolan was also very passionate about it. And you can tell, like his collaboration with Hans Zimmer, for example, you can tell that he is very like passionate about the music and the sounds and the sound design and the soundscape and all of that. He's very passionate about how that is going to sound and affect his picture. And I think him being involved in that made Ludwig like very passionate about it. Not only did he want to impress Christopher Nolan, I think, but he also wanted to impress the fans. Like he made a very brilliant score with Black Panther, so he had to sort of one up that, and I definitely think he did with this Tenet score. So there are going to be spoilers of the movie throughout this video because I couldn't think of a way to really describe music for a soundtrack without spoiling and mentioning specific scenes or spoiling plot points, things like that, because the music is really meant to drive and suit the film's needs and scenes. So it wouldn't make sense to just review the music standalone, even though I'm not really a movie enthusiast, and I'm also not like a reviewer that can provide any like sort of knowledge on the story or something like that. But I do believe that I'm able to really discuss and talk about the music, because that is sort of what drove me to be so passionate about lore and in video games and also in movies. And I think that I'll be able to provide some interesting points, and my point of view will hopefully be appreciated by some people. And as long as that's there, I will be happy. And even if nobody appreciates it, it's fine too. So let's just get into it. So I first wanted to mention that the music takes a lot of inspiration from film scores from Hans Zimmer, obviously. Things like Inception, the soundscapes, I think, from Dunkirk, like a lot of the electronic sounds and things like that, I think were very inspired by Nolan's previous film. And then as well as Dark Phoenix, which I believe is still to this date Hans's last movie that has come out. Obviously, there's 5 movies that haven't come out yet that he's scored. The SpongeBob movie, there is No Time to Die, Wonder Woman 2, we got Top Gun Maverick, and I believe there's another one, Dune. Dune, yeah. Dune is a very passionate project for Hans, I believe. But enough about Hans, let's get back to the topic. I believe there is even a lot of inspiration from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's work, especially like what I felt to be the extremely like experimental and electronic score, Gone Girl. There were a lot of like really intense music that was highly experimental in that movie, and that really like it affected how those scenes were, and those scenes without music would probably not be nearly as intense and anxiety driving as they were, especially seeing it in the theater. So in comparison to Tenet, obviously, like, I felt that Tenet was indeed very experimental, but even though that was the case for like this score, it also it comes off as like very organic sounding, and I don't think that was like something that was easy to really accomplish. I definitely think that was only accomplishable because of Ludwig and Nolan being able to be like so passionate about something like this. And I definitely know Nolan is very passionate about music and how it works with his film, so I do believe that was honestly the only way that like something this experimental, for me at least, could be so organic sounding. And unfortunately in the video, I'm probably not going to play any of the music. It's just going to be my voice, only because it's going to get like copyrighted, obviously, or the video would have to be muted, so then you wouldn't even be able to hear anything. So if I do mention like a specific cue on the soundtrack, which is just a track in case you don't know the word cue, I'll obviously link it in the description below, so you can listen to the cues that I'm talking about and things like that. And I know not everybody tends to pay attention to music in films or video games, but it has been my personal passion since my junior year of high school, I think. I have always wanted and planned on making video blogs or writing blogs to describe how music in films makes me feel. And I've always wanted to be able to share that passion with people who would also be interested in having civil discussions and appreciate the same things that I appreciate. And I believe that Tenet is a terrific example as to how music can really drive a picture to create like intense, emotional, and awe-dropping scenes. For example, like right off the bat, the prologue in the movie, which I think was the highlight of the film, honestly, it was also like the best cue I think I've heard this year. The inverted sounds in the beginning of the orchestra tuning was so mind-blowing to actually hear that in the theater. And not only that, but like it's something so simple to like think of and like do, but like to actually execute that it made it so much better, because it had ended up sounding like so much like more unique, and it definitely wasn't something I've heard of, really. I think that the only thing I can think of is the very beginning of the Steve Jobs movie with Daniel Pemberton scoring that movie. They had like a similar orchestra tuning up sort of thing, but it wasn't nearly as intense and like, or not intense, but like it wasn't nearly as mind-blowing to hear as I think this one was, because that one was more, it wasn't inverted, I think, And that's what this music was about, inversion. And like Göransson really wanted to invert, manipulate, change, like do all those kind of things to things that we're used to hearing, but like changing it to so you can't like put your finger on what you're actually hearing, if that makes sense. And honestly, Rainy Night in Tallinn, which is the prologue music, it reminded me of how intense and appropriate like the Q gap was in Dark Phoenix, which is pretty much the opening of the movie. They're both 8-minute cues, so that's why I kind of made that comparison. And I also think they kind of build up the same way, and they were just very similar in a lot of ways to me. And Dark Phoenix, like mentioning that, was one of my favorite scores of 2019. Obviously not the best movie in the world, but that doesn't mean the music is bad by any means. So my favorite cue, though, on the soundtrack is called Windmills. It takes one of my favorite leitmotifs in this movie, which I believe I considered it to be like the protagonist theme, but it could honestly just be like Tenet, I think. I'm honestly not sure like the exact themes and who they were meant for. Obviously, we'll get later on into the villain's theme and things like that, but I'm really not sure about that cue. But it definitely has a different feel to it than the rest of the score. It's honestly like relaxing to listen to that cue. Um, so discovering like tiny details that one may have missed during their first viewing is such a cool experience too. There were like a number of things to like if you haven't seen the movie, there's a number of things to like look out for, and there's a lot of scenes as well. So I would say look out for the test, which is pretty much directly after the prologue. I didn't notice this, but minor spoiler here is the main protagonist. He takes like a pill to kill himself or something, but it was actually like a test, apparently, for this thing that he was, I guess, tasked to do. So the other ones are basically a lady jumping off a boat, the fight between the protagonist and a guard, or not a guard, but like somebody that was, fighting him, and as well as the car driving in reverse when there was no driver. So those were just some minor like things that people may have missed, and I'm not going to explain like what exactly those are, but if you pay attention to those minor details in the beginning of the movie, when they get explained later on, it'll be pretty cool for you to see and understand. I know one of them that I missed. Well, I didn't miss it. I remember the lady jumping off the boat, but I didn't make that connection until they actually described it and how she said that she saw a lady jumping off a boat and felt like envy from them, pretty much. And some of those like very interesting things to note about the score, going back to the score, is how like Nolan tends to always be very into the music of his films and like the soundscape and design and everything. And just like he had done with Hans with the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, Interstellar, and most recently Dunkirk, he always tended to like sort of contribute to the score in a way that an average person probably wouldn't realize. So there was an article on Yahoo that I saw. It was made about a week ago before the film came out, and it stated that Nolan's heavy breathing is part of Göransson's score, and I was like, what? So when you actually listen to it, Göransson began working on the score before like the cameras rolled, before they were filming, 6 months before, and it enabled him ample time to have it assembled in tandem with the film, which is not usually always going to be the case. Usually you're not going to be scoring a film until post-production. So Göransson was very lucky to be able to, score 6 months before cameras rolled. He also stated that guitars are a huge part of the score. I remember it was in another cue, but I did take note that it was in the cue the protagonist. So, and it also has added distortion effects, like the guitar sounds have added distortion effects and sound manipulations that were used to create something entirely new and unique. And that's something that Göransson has always liked to do with his music, is take something that people hear, like a guitar, like people know what a guitar sounds like, but he wants to manipulate and distort that sound to create something that someone wouldn't be able to put their finger on what that sound is. So I think that's really unique and cool that he has that sort of gift and ability to do that. So going back to Nolan's heavy breathing, it's actually heard in the cues 747 from Mumbai to Amalfi Sator, which we're gonna talk about later on, and Red Room, Blue Room. So those are the 4 cues I believe that his heavy breathing was used as part of the soundscape. And the reason they use that is it was actually Chris's idea, that he wanted his, like, either voices in general or just like his heavy breathing as part of the soundscape for Sator's character, which is Kenneth Branagh. And this was, Chris's idea. He wanted that soundscape for the antagonist of the film, and I personally felt that it worked, and it was also executed very well. Those initial heavy breathing sounds became like really uncomfortable, raspy sounds, and in my opinion, like, if you listen to those cues, it's pure genius how well that inversion of the sounds and the manipulations that Göransson did. Like, it's very, very unique. And I think you can actually hear a lot of that in Mandalorian, because they were probably working on those, like, Göransson, I believe, was probably working on those pretty close with each other. I would assume, but I'm not exactly sure. So the other topic I wanted to cover was how Göransson also seemed to work with Travis Scott, who wrote an original song for Tenet, which is called The Plan. It's the last track on the soundtrack, track 18, and it's heard in the end credits. So it's not in the movie, but there is actually 2 cues where the background vocals from Travis Scott's song is actually heard. It's in Trucks in Place and Posterity. And not only do I find it, like, important to have consistency in the music throughout a film or game, but I also believe that there was a reasoning behind, like, putting these vocals in those cues, as they were both, like, very high points in the film. The Trucks in Place was, like, pretty cool, like, action part of the movie. I wouldn't say it was like the climax, but the Posterity cue is a 13-minute cue, which is really long, and it's played under the huge finale. And for me, like, that music, that scene, everything that happened during that was just really, like, shocking and pretty cool, in my opinion. I also feel like Göransson felt really at home in his roots with music due to working with Travis Scott, like, in the song, as well as probably incorporating his background vocals and whatnot from his song into his score, because he's frequently collaborated with Childish Gambino in the past, and he's produced several of his studio albums. So I'm sure that made him probably feel a lot more comfortable with being able to work on the score, because he was able to incorporate something that he was so used to working with in his past that it probably felt good for him. So yeah, that is pretty much my review of Tenet and the music. Not so much Tenet, but more the music and how it impacted me. I hope that somebody will be able to learn something from this. I'm not sure that everyone would appreciate something like this, but I'm sure there's a select few number of people that would. So I hope to do more reviews of how music has, like, truly, like, compelled me to do what I want to do, and it's honestly led me to become a better person And I believe that I've become like more attentive to films as well as video games, and I've started to appreciate the artistry that both of them provide. And I think without music, like my passion for music, I think I would have missed out on a lot of those like appreciations that I currently have now. And I hope in the future I'll be able to make a more consistent format for these videos, as I don't want it just to be like a podcast type thing. But when I do, I hope that I can receive some like constructive feedback on the video and what people thought of the music. Just having like civil discussions about it. And I want there to like be some place where like people are able to have like proper educational discussions about film and video game music and how effective they can be in art, and especially like for picture. Yeah. So highlights of the score for me were Rainy Nights in Tallinn, Windmills, Freeport, Seder, Inversion, Posterity, and of course Travis Scott's The Plan. So I'll have those linked down below, and I'll also link the full soundtrack because Water Tower Music did upload the whole soundtrack into one video, which is the record label. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and you have a great rest of your evening.